Today, my guest is Lacey Grimm, and Lacey and I hooked up quite a few months ago, I think, on the typical Facebook page where I find everyone. And Lacey and I have a lot in common, except that she's actually doing it, and I just keep talking about it.
Oh,
But I'm thrilled to have you here today, Lacey. Thank you so much for hanging out.
I'm excited to be here.
Lacey she has a homestead. You said 12 years you've been?
Yeah, we've been on our property now for 12 years. Yeah. Yeah.
And, I recently found out that they actually live in a town that I was looking at for a house,
Oh
so
my
I
gosh.
was
Yeah.
like, "This is such a cool
Amazing.
coincidence."
Yes.
And they're only 45 minutes from where I'm gonna be moving, which is very exciting. And so they have a homestead, and they also have a podcast called "I Bought a Homestead, Now What?" Which is also awesome, and I can't wait to, just really dive in and take lots of lessons as I'm about to start a new place. Um, but so Lacey, and your website is called a Schoolhouse Life or the Schoolhouse Life?
That's Schoolhouse Life. Yeah. Yeah.
And so tell me and the listeners where like how this all started. Like, have you
Oh,
always been a homesteader?
that's a good question. So it started with this is the slippery slope of growing something. We lived in a small apartment in Asheville, North Carolina. I knew we wanted to grow stuff. So I bought an herb book and was like doing all this research on what I could grow, like in pots. So we started on the stoop of our apartment growing some things like a tomato and prickly pear cactus and a couple other herbs. And it just from there, it was like, okay, well, now we need to live somewhere where we have a yard. And from there, we went to a townhome and it had like a 10 by 10 or 12 by 12 back fenced area. And we maxed it out with window boxes. Um, and then from there, we bought a small place with a quarter of an acre, and we did everything we could possibly do there. And then we realized we had bees and we had chickens and we had a garden and we were selling at the farmers market. We were doing really well there, and we knew we wanted to have some goats was our goal, which I find most people who step into homesteading first thing first goats, which we advise against now, but we learned that lesson the hard way. Um, and so we bought a foreclosed property and we've been at it ever since.
Wow. For me, goats are not
They're
part
not on a list.
no.
Good, you're
And
wise.
they're super cute to watch, but the whole like they'll eat everything. I'm like, I can't, no.
Yeah, they eat everything. They get out of everything. It's really the hardest part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you started with chickens.
Yeah, actually, I can't remember if it was chickens or bees first. There's the
Oh,
question.
okay. Chickens and bees. That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, wow, cool. So you do your own honey too.
Actually, we moved hoping that we could up our production, but we moved to a place, and this is something to be aware of when you're moving. The neighbor sprays a lot of things on his field, so we have bees for like we'll get them and they'll last for maybe a year or so, but they are very weak and
Oh,
they always die because of their exposure over there. So, yeah, we don't have bees anymore, sadly. We do from time to time. We'll try again, but we just depend on the bees that come in from wherever they come in.
oh gosh, that's such a bummer.
It is a bummer.
I definitely did not consider that. I mean, bees are also not on my list because I'm scared of bugs.
Well,
But
I mean, yeah, regardless, like I constantly have a little bit of a fear of what's drifting over, like I can't really build a wall against their property. So,
yeah.
yeah, it's just something you got to think about. And, I can't convince them not to spray. They're just growing corn too and soy for deer. Like they're not even farmers. So it's really frustrating. But
Oh my gosh, they don't even eat that.
no, they eat what eats that, which is probably not a good idea. But.
Oh my gosh. But so you moved a few times. So I'm gonna just say, so gardening is the gateway drug, honestly.
Yeah, I would say when you suddenly experience like what it looks like to take a seed, stick it in the ground, add water, and what miraculous thing transpires, you're just like, oh, how do I get more of that? So
Yeah.
yeah, that's definitely what started it for all. And I also got I got pregnant, which is sort of like planting a seed at the same time. And so, that you start to think like when you're pregnant about all the things you do, like all the things you eat and all the things you're using. And so I started to become just like really hyper aware of ingredients and chemicals and all of that. So, and it's in Asheville, it's hippie culture. So my friends were pretty hippie, and you just start to kind of uncover a few like things that are dangerous, and that's a slippery slope too. So you just start kind of reeling in and connecting back with nature as much as you can.
Oh my gosh. It's so true. I mean, I actually there's a lady in Raleigh that I love. I had her on the podcast. Her name is Asia, and
Mhm.
she talked on the podcast about container gardening. And I was like,
Awesome.
that's so cool because there are so many people that live in cities and they're like, but what can I possibly do? I live in the
Oh yeah.
city. And
Yeah.
so I was like, bing, bing, container gardening, anyone can do it.
That's true.
You don't need fancy pots. You just need something and some dirt. And that just it's addictive when you see the actual food comes out of the dirt and some seeds. It's beautiful. And then, you're like, I want to eat all of this and I need to grow more.
Yeah.
But and then so chickens and then goats. And do you have other animals now?
So we don't have goats anymore. Goats they came and went. They served a purpose here. We had a lot of brush and clearing that needed to happen, and we actually have some more now. So we might get them for temporary, but um, and then we had sheep for many years was our main thing for wool and for meat. But we always run broiler chickens, so we raise our own there, and we always have some layers. And then so the sheep we had for about 10 years, I would say. And then we decided that we were tired of hurting them as humans. So we would run around just ourselves and our kids, like trying to get them to do what we wanted. And our goal really is to raise animals that are stout and strong and resilient and don't need a lot of input. So we weren't vaccinating, we weren't doing a lot of hoof trimming, we weren't doing a lot. In fact, we weren't even really feeding them anymore because they just became these wild animals. So it was really like we had a zoo animal, and they were great. They were healthy and strong, and they were having babies, and it was wonderful. But getting them to do what we wanted them to do was really difficult. So if they got out of a fence, it was extremely difficult and frustrating. So we were like, you know what, let's take a break from sheep. And then we bought a herding dog. So Robbie is he's a year and a half. So we've had him for about a year and a half. And eventually we're probably going to get more sheep because he'd be great. When you see a herding dog work, you're like, oh, that's what's supposed to happen. It's not supposed to be a bunch of us out there like, come on, like trying to scare the sheep. Anyway, but now we have cows. So we've really kind of jumped into cows. My husband did, he got certified as a regenerative agriculture certifier. And so then you're like, okay, well, let's raise cows that way. So been raising cows on a separate piece of property. It's a 40-acre lot. And then we have 6 on our property here that are a mixed breed of meat and dairy. So we do dairy cows
Awesome.
and milk.
Oh, I'm so excited you're gonna be so close to me. Like I'm obsessed right now with just like raw milk. I've never had anything so good. And there's a local farmer that I will be missing who I get that from now.
Oh, yeah. Well, good news is in Virginia, it's legal. So you're probably going to get a better price.
Awesome. And raw chocolate milk is even better.
Oh, yeah. Right.
It's like being a kid, and I think it's so fun. That's so. Do you have to train your dog to do that? Does he go to training?
So we actually we bought him from friends of ours who they have a farm called Working Aussie Homestead, and they raise them specifically, and part of what they do is a ton of training really early in their lives. Um, and this is good for like all puppies, but they do a lot. I can't remember the names of it. And, we did a podcast with them you could listen to if you wanted the details, but just a ton. So when we got Robbie, he was, normal, like 10 weeks, 12 weeks old. And he was already kind of, like had all of this like pre-training in terms of demeanor and discipline. And then the rest of the like herding parts, we do train him. My husband works with him a lot, and there's a lot of things that you do to help him understand that. But there's so much that's also intuitive for him that he just knows. So it's really about controlling what he already is going to do, anyways. And yeah, my husband is very involved with doing that to make sure that, he's going to do what he wants. Um, they're really not fully grown until they're 2 years. So he's still kind of a teenager in his abilities, but he's doing really good. And it's made our lives so much easier. It's incredible. We're like, man, we should have done this a long time ago.
Oh, that's awesome. So he's herding cows.
Hmm.
So he knows what he'll know what he's doing when you get cheap again.
Yeah, for sure. He actually herds chickens too. He'll get them back in their coop. Like he just is he instinctively wants everything to go where it's supposed to be. So the key is just helping him understand where that is.
Okay, I get that. I mean, I have a herding dog technically, but
Oh yeah.
she's a couch potato, because we don't have anyone to herd. But
What kind of dog do you have?
she's an Australian cattle dog mix.
Okay.
She actually came from Georgia because she was mm, a rescue. So she's got some trauma that I don't know about, but she
Right.
does fine with the chickens as long as they don't like run crazy and like if there's a lot of uh um what's the word I want? If there's a lot of like distraction and just a lot of activity. She had a chick that like ran right across from her, and it's the fast I think that catches her prey drive. But generally the chickens are pretty low key and they will um just like saunter around and they can sit right beside her. And
Oh.
she's totally cool. She did not eat the chick.
Oh, okay. No
No.
judgment.
Uh I know it happens and it's no, it did not happen. She has never hurt a chicken. But I would love to have her be more active. Oh crap. Where did I go?
I don't know. I'm gonna actually have to plug my. I thought it was plugged in. Sorry, my charger was in the wrong outlet, I guess. Almost lost me completely.
Oh my gosh. But so I did want to get to the point that you were talking about with community and
Mm.
security. So how what's your mindset around that, I guess? How did that become part of your uh sort of goal or your I don't know how to make words for that, but how did that come to be something that you'd like to talk about?
For the community or the food security or both?
Both.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I think we have a little bit of a culture that talks about freedom and it talks about independence and it really highlights those things and makes people feel like that's the ultimate goal. And especially in the United States, I feel like other cultures are very different. And what I've noticed is a lot of other cultures, you have multi-generational homes and homesteads even, and just observing that and observing there's like just so many levels to how a community supports. So you first of all have the like physical element of if, for example, a community, if you need a tractor and you have six families go in on a tractor together, the
Mm.
difference of the impact on that, yeah, on each family versus how that impacts one individual family when they pay for a tractor, which could be anywhere from 30,000 to $100,000, right? It's an incredible difference, and that's just one small thing, and just when you look at everything that's ever been accomplished, most of it required a lot of people or a concerted effort by a group. Um, but even just culturally speaking, when you look at small farms and homesteads that are successful, even in the United States, you can see that, oh, okay, we've got a family where the parents live next door and they can help babysit the kids while the younger generation is in the garden or working the animals. Or, like maybe it's several families and there's just this, all the kids are together hanging out and they're doing what they, can do. And then the adults are doing what they can do and like canning together and preserving together and just to the simple things of when you process a cow, that's a lot of meat, right? Like what are you going to do with that individually? But humans have been eating cows for a really long time and they've been doing it together, right? And they use all of it and it's a group effort. When you think about Native Americans doing buffalo hunting or whatever like that, They all went in together. They all skinned it together. They all, built their homes out of that hide and ate all the meat, and all of that was something that not only did it provide for them the sustenance, but they also had this really clear position, this really clear um, place in their community. And I think that what most of us are lacking is a sense of place, a sense of belonging. And I think that we can see in society how that's playing out, where people are angry all the time, and people are, our teenagers, our kids are just really floundering. Um, and I can feel it getting worse each time. Like I feel like I've felt a certain amount of floundering, like not really sure what I'm supposed to do, where I'm supposed to be, who I'm supposed to help, how I'm supposed to serve, what my skills are. I think we all have struggled with that. And when you're in a really tight community, it's not that you don't have time to think about it. It's that those roles in a lot of ways are provided for you, and people see you and help you and nurture you, and in a way that we are not as a society doing at all in any way. um but just from a really practical point of view, we have a circle of friends who are all homesteaders, and we've even had a homestead mastermind that we ran for a few years, where once a month we would come together and we would just talk about, what's happening, what are we struggling with, what are we trying to get done before next time. So some accountability. And since our kids were little, a lot of us have been friends, and we can call on each other. We're going out of town, can you farm sit? Or you have this tool, can I borrow it? And then, like we've gone in on tools together and things like that. So that's sort of been the, like, we see the light and we're like, oh my gosh, that's so good. And how much more of that could we get? And then build this security around not needing outside things, right? Like not we have somebody does the cows, and somebody does the garden, and somebody does the canning. And if everybody feels like they have their part that they're offering, um, then we don't have to look at, the grocery store as much. We don't have to look at, Amazon, right? Like we don't need shipments coming in. It's all just in this little circle. And I think it's like a secret that intentionally is sort of being withheld from us. Like, oh yeah, you could be powerful if you guys would just figure out how to get along and how to work together. But as long as we keep feeding you with this individualized culture, and maybe it's not as conspiratorial as all of that, but like it does feel like, um what is it, the united we stand, together we fall, or whatever. And that sounds nice, but I don't see people necessarily really living that out day to day, and it's only getting worse. It's like, I think there was a culture in the 50s, and maybe this is idealism, but 50s and 60s, where you lived in a subdivision but you knew everybody and all the kids played together. And even when I was a kid, there was a bit of that, right? And if you needed a cup of sugar, you would go to the neighbor and they would have it. And I think that's gone. I don't think that that's really happening anymore.
Yeah, I agree to a large part of that.
Yeah. And we're afraid of each other, and that's, I think, a purposeful thing. I think that the more afraid we are of each other, the more reliant we have to be on our own selves, on our own careers. So we work like slaves to try to like make things happen. And so what ultimately we can have Amazon shipments come directly to our door and not interact with community at all. And it's just, it's like these little things like, oh, it's easier to just shop online and then it's there the next day. Okay, well, what if you challenged yourself to only shop in the context of your own community? Who would you meet? Who would you see? How would you feel connected if you just weren't waiting for boxes to show up on your doorstep, right? Like, and we're all thinking, "Oh, I need more time. I need more time. I need more time." And it's difficult to even gauge, like, you need more time for what? In my ideal mind, it's like for sitting around the campfire and like talking about how the day was, right? Like, or for quilting circles, or like I have a very what I would love for life to look like picture in my mind. And I hope we can go back to that. I hope that, and I feel like I'm seeing that. I'm hearing that there are more younger kids saying, "I don't want social media," because I think social media, it feels like it's bringing us together, but it's really not. It's doing the opposite. Um, and so I think we have to, as humans in today's society, we have to be really aware of that. We have to be really intentional about, okay, I'm using social media to find events that I can actually go to find people that I can actually connect with, and not just keep feeding our we have a desire to learn and to know more all the time. And social media is feeds off of that. And we feel like we're learning and we feel like we're getting something done. And anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now.
I love that so much, Lacey. And I've said this in the past that in this podcast, one of the things that I'm doing is like building my tribe, like the people that I want to be in my, because I'm looking for exactly that. I
Mhm.
want the friends that are nearby that, are all similar minded. I want to be able to provide something and then have someone else assist me with other things or provide something else. And like, I did not, when you talked about community, I did not think about like farm tools and how that's a huge thing because as a smaller farmer, that could put you under, just to
Oh,
have one
absolutely.
thing of convenience. And that so then you're like you're busting it for the rest of your life to pay for this thing. Whereas if you have friends nearby and you all go together, everyone doesn't need to spend $100,000 on a tractor. You can just share it. And
But
that's
in a consumer-based society and I don't want to bash capitalism because I think there are so many great things about capitalism, but I do think there is that one element of like, okay, is it better for the company to sell one tractor to seven people or to sell seven tractors, right? Like, so there's not a movement to like co-op stuff. That's
encourage
not
that, right?
something that's going to come from the top down. It has to come from, the consumer up. Like, how do we, but when you have trust issues, um,
Right.
when you don't trust your community, when you don't have that foundation, when you don't feel like that's something, I think we have a like a dog eat dog mentality in our minds that we have a really hard time letting go of. And I've seen that play out over and over and over again where, even with our, with the closest people that even with family, you can feel that way. And I don't know how you break free from that, but that's kind of the bondage I think we're all suffering from.
Right. Well, especially when it actually comes true. Like you've been
Yeah.
fully
Yeah.
take, taken advantage of. But in general, I think you're right. Like people are so afraid to let their guard down and let someone be close to them and stuff like that. But that's so true. It's so true. And I mean, I have seen a little bit of that. Well, I don't know. I'm trying to encourage people to do stuff like that. Like I have a couple of friends who just bought a freeze dryer, which is like,
Fun.
the new thing. But
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, those things are so expensive.
Yeah.
Like,
It's very
can
expensive.
you like rent it out to people or have people
Yeah.
come over and share, like do a big freeze drying session or something like that just to help make it
Offset.
pay for
Yeah.
itself. Yeah. But because they are so expensive.
They're
And
so
it's not they're not usually something that you can just like, here, why don't you borrow it for a little while? Because they're huge.
Yeah, massive. Yeah, we have friends that have one, and fortunately, they're the kind of friends that will share. And so, if we want to freeze dry, they'll let us. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where like we can't afford that. Not only that, but it takes up a ton of room. I don't have a place to put it. Like there's layers to it. But yeah, having friends that are willing to share and to also, you can share with them, and how can you find that mutual like balance and um it's hard in this society for sure, but yeah, it's definitely worth seeking out. And I think the more the merrier, like it can't be just one person, because yeah, if one person burns you, then you're really like just left feeling injured, but the larger the community, the more diversity, and the more, when one person maybe hurts you, you have the other people to be like, is this normal? And they can help you feel better, help you find your place, and then maybe help you mend that relationship. Because I think, very rarely are two people, I say this about marriage too a lot actually, is like one of the things I see people struggling with is making their marriage work. And a lot of times what I think they need is really friends who are married to help kind of influence them, or even other family relationships like mother-daughter relationships. You need to have another friend who has a daughter so that you can actually understand the dynamics and have this conversation like, my daughter did this, oh, so did mine, it must be normal, like there's got to be like these,
Okay.
it's like the ecosystem. It's not just a like every man for himself. Like when you have a relationship with someone, that's a community relationship that we're all going to have to try to support. Like, and that's, a dynamic that we just don't really have in our culture.
Oh,
Um, anyway,
God. Yeah. I mean, I think you're totally right in that. I mean, it's there are it's so there's so much healing um in community, like other people who are experiencing something similar. So you don't feel like, your relationship or your, whatever is going on like is unusual.
Right. Yeah. Like the outlier. I think we all feel like outliers right now, for the most part. Right. And
Mm,
that's the opposite of feeling belonging.
yes.
So,
Ooh. Well, that could go really deep. But so let's talk about food security because that is something that I'm super passionate about as a volunteer gardener. But what are your thoughts on that? I know we talked about community and that's, it's a big part of that.
it is. Yeah, for sure. I think, one of the things that when you hear those words, you start thinking about is like discrepancies in prices and how good food costs so much. And I don't think that that's really the actual fundamental problem. I think the problem is that we've become very addicted to cheap food.
Mhm.
And so it's really difficult to bounce back from that because we have this thing that isn't really food and we're giving it to people who can't afford to pay for the thing that is actually food, where really we shouldn't even have the fake food. We should just have the real food and people should get paid for that food to make it. They should be paid fairly. um, I think one of the this is like getting pretty like deep into my ideology, but when I think about our American culture, it was really founded on slavery, right? It was founded on this idea that we have cheap labor and we pay less than anywhere else, because we have so much property land that we can just manufacture and produce at high rates without thinking about consequences, right? And even though we got rid of slavery, we didn't, right? Like we still have to we have to literally fly people in to work in our fields when it's harvest season, right? We have to outsource our chicken farming to China or wherever, whatever's happening right now. Like it's a bizarre world where we can't make food and sell it in a way that compensates the person who's making the food. It's a complete imbalance of energy, the energy chain, right?
Oh,
And it's because I think we fundamentally were sort of built on this slavery culture. And so yeah, we don't have slaves technically within the frame, the way that we did. But we do. We're passing that buck to somebody else and in a different way that is maybe out of sight,
basically.
out of mind. Right. Yeah. Um, anyway, so my thoughts on food security are so much different than like, okay, just dealing with that because it's its own issue. And I think the solution is probably the same, which is you need to be buying your groceries from the people you know.
Hmm.
You need to be buying your food from people you know and trust. And those people should be a part of your community and you should support them. And they should support you, right? Like we need doctors and we need healthcare professionals and we need the people who know different and have different skill sets. But they shouldn't be so far removed and we shouldn't value one over the other. And, it sounds a little like communism and it's really not when the society is doing it within the context of its own,
Right.
like we don't have somebody above us telling us. Um, but anyway, so the idea that, we each contribute to our community in one way or the other. And what I found is most people make stuff. Like most people, if they don't, they want to, and they feel good when they do it. And so in in our little community, we started what we call a food club, and how that looks is, and it's just at the beginning phases, so we're really, have big visions of what it will be down the road. But as of right now, we're serving about 50 families, and we have sort of gathered from around us as close as we can get. And I think the farthest we source things from, well, we get some peanut butter from Georgia. We're really, really, really cautious about ingredients. So we sort of have a tiered effect. Like ingredients are number one important. Number two is the localness and the fair tradeness of it. And then number three is like, is it, something we even really want or need?
Right.
So the first thing is like ingredients, right? Like if we have a local farmer who's doing everything, conventionally, then it's not going to be a match. And if we find a farmer that is super good at like making something that's super beneficial, but they're outside that 50-mile marker, then we're going to say, okay, look, we'll make an exception. We'll figure this out. But we're trying to keep in mind, like, what if we didn't have cars? What would it look
Yes.
like? And how would we get food if we couldn't pay for oil? or gas, you know, like we need to create a system that's a little less dependent and reliant on big trucks coming from somewhere or even little cars coming from somewhere. And, you know, that's again, it's an idealistic situation and it's been a struggle. It's been really difficult to find and source reliable things. But what we've found is as we put that out there and we got families involved, and then we put out to the community that was involved, okay, what do you make? What do you want to make? What can we list that you are doing or providing? And put that on the site. And one of the most beautiful parts about it is we, you know, we do veggie, we do raw milk, we do other dairy products, we do meats. And all of it, Drew and I are like kind of obsessive about sourcing. So we really go and we talk to the farmers and we say, you know, are you doing antibiotics? Are you doing vaccinations? Are you feeding, you know, GMO corn? Are you like, what are you doing? And we get a real feel for what their practices are. Um, and then once we have built that relationship and feel good about it, then we can bring them in. But so connecting that, because it's really difficult as a consumer to be able to mitigate all of the different moving pieces, right? We've got that grass fed label, which now is shifting to, if you don't know this, it's fascinating. I love how conventional farmers um how they make it work, right? Like, and it's not just them, it's like the system working down because you got to make it work. But if you sprout corn, say you fill a trough with corn and then you put water in it, they'll sprout. That you can feed your cows and you can call that cow a grass-fed cow. There's nothing, no, a cow should never eat corn. It's not a part of their regular diet. The only reason a cow is fed corn is so that they will get fatter. And the only reason the cows you buy at the grocery store, the cows you buy most anywhere, even at the farmer's market, are fat, obese cows that are sick and dying if they couldn't live their full life because they would be too sick to do it. So anyway, like there's this is like, okay, understanding that, and then understanding that you have to, when you go to the farmer's market, ask the right questions. Just because they're at the farmer's market doesn't mean they're providing something that's actually better for you, which is sad because you're looking this guy in the eye. But what we can do as a consumer and what we can do as a part of the food club is we can say, look, we have a group of people who don't want corn and they don't want antibiotics. Can you provide that? And they'll either say, I'm not interested in participating. I made plenty of phone calls where they're like, no, we spray. And I'm like, okay, well, we have 50 families who want 50, you know, bushels of peaches. And if you're going to spray, we're not going to buy them from you. We're going to look for someone else. And so, you know, we get to have that conversation then, and then they're hearing it, you know, like, then they're like, oh, I didn't know there's a market for that. Maybe I can do something differently. Right. And so it's about like planting all kinds of little seeds. And also then within the community, people see, oh, we have a need for strawberries because we can't find them. I'll plant strawberries. I'll grow those strawberries, right? And so we're finding these and filling them within the context of the community. Now, is it exactly perfect? No, but we feel really good about the impact that we're having on the local food economy. We put, I think we're about 100 grand that we've put back into the local food economy in the last year and a half,
That's
which feels really amazing.
That's so beautiful, Lacey. Oh my gosh. That's I love that. And I love the fact that you're able to um like educate the farmers because you know they're just like I just need to pump as much out as I can.
Mm,
But if you're, you know, if you don't have to do that,
right.
you're still making money because you're selling to people that actually want that product. But that also brings up with me when you're talking about the labels is, you know, like cage-free eggs or, you know, whatever. And it
Right.
doesn't mean that they're happy chickens. It means that they're in a tiny box.
Right.
But technically not a cage, but you know,
Right.
there's no light. But that
But
type of
it's
thing, you know, or you know, organic or, you know, natural. Oh my gosh. Those labels are just evil. But,
not.
you know, so it's important to ask those correct questions that matter to you. There, you know, there are things that matter to different people. You know,
Right.
local is really important as well.
Yeah.
And then, you know, organic, of course, but chemical free is so hard. And I know you guys you're delving into the regenerative,
Mhm.
realm, which is so important. Oh my gosh, because people are like, no, you're not supposed to eat cows. Like it's not bad, it's not good for the environment. But it's because they're doing it conventionally and they're not feeding them healthy and you know, they're not letting them graze on the grass. They're feeding them whatever. But
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a whole, there's a whole thing to that, but I think it's beautiful that you have spoken with so many people that you know your community, and that you are trying to provide for them or help them. I think that's all so beautiful, and have everyone contribute. I mean, it's just such a
Well, what I love about it too is that if you so within the club, if you provide something, you can take payment from it, for what you sell, or you can take a credit for more food.
yeah.
So if you bring something to the table, so say somebody has, financially doesn't have the money. It's like, okay, well, what can you make? What can you provide for us that will then offset the cost of the foods, these good, healthful foods that
I
you want?
love bartering.
So yeah,
So
exactly. It's like
awesome.
a bartering situation. It's working out really beautifully in that way.
Oh, I love that so much. I'm so excited to be in the South soon. I think that's so fantastic. And those two phrases that you were talking about, so the food club I had never heard of, but I totally want in on that. I, I have a jam business. Um
Yes, I know.
I
You said
totally
that. I was like, "Ooh, we need to talk."
totally want in on that. And the community thing that you were talking about with equipment and such, I think that's also those are so fantastic.
Mm.
And also the food security thing is it's so different than the view that I had had, but it's makes so much sense. And it sparks a lot of conversations, a lot of thought. So I think that those are so important, such important messages. Um, but so I just wanted to make sure that I'm honoring your time because I know you have a very busy life. But so when I there are so many different angles that I want to go with you, but I don't want to take up more of your time. But so
Aw.
when I say the word sustainability to you, Lacey, what does that mean?
So, for me, it means ease, like easy. Not easy like it's not work, but ease like it makes sense and things fall into place. It's like like an ecosystem, where
Happens. Right.
yeah, like you don't have to work super hard, but the rain comes, you catch the rain, it feeds your garden, like just this cycle of life. That's what I think of sustainability. And I think um it's like in every element of life, like whether it's your healthcare or your food care, whatever, which are pretty much the same thing. Like the couch you buy, like what is it? What's the impact? Is it an easy impact? Is it stressing you out? Is it stressing the environment out? Is it stressing, like anything that adds stress feels
Mm.
like it's counterintuitive to sustainability, right? Like there is this really beautiful flow in nature that doesn't require the hands of man. But if we participate, we actually can enhance it. We can make it better. And I think a lot of times we think we're making it worse. Everything we do is making it worse. And we don't have to feel that way. I think we're meant to be here and we need to figure out how we feel, that place, that sense of belonging and fitting into the puzzle in a way that is ease, is sustainable, is like not a stress, is not a something we're striving to do. It's just natural.
Ooh, I love that. Oh my gosh. That makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. I mean, life is going to happen with or without us. So, like, we have the opportunity to make it better.
Mm.
Or we can do bad things and make it worse. So, like, we just need to be thoughtful about what we're doing and encourage what is already happening
Yeah.
uh, on the good
Yeah,
end.
there's a I'm Jewish, so I study a little bit of Kabbalah. Like it not that the two go hand in hand. You don't have to be Jewish to study Kabbalah. But the thought in Kabbalah is that essentially we're all vessels and from the creator we receive and that vessel gets full. And I think most of us are running around like just like there's a hole in our vessel or something is just pouring out the bottom. And when I think of sustainability, I think, okay, we're a vessel and we're overflowing and filling all the other vessels and all the other things, and it's just coming out. And it's like, I think we tend to like overcomplicate, like, oh, let's charge taxes on emissions. It's like what? That's like it's backwards, right? Like we need to look at it from the front end too. Um, there's a void if there's a need for that, right? Like there's a void, we're missing something somewhere. So if we think too much about energy and how it flows, we get obsessed with energy and like how do we harness energy? But we are energy, and we everything we do can create some kind of an impact, and it doesn't have to be so complicated. But anyway, I just when I have this vision in my mind, and I really like to focus on it of just being like a earthenware bowl, and it's just flowing in, and my job is to just let it outpour so that it feeds whatever else it needs to feed. And um yeah, so it doesn't have to be super complicated. And finding one thing at a time has been the key for me. Like I can't overhaul my entire life all at one moment. And when you start to like step out of like the spinning world around you and say, "Oh, okay, well, I could, buy a mattress that's made of natural fibers." Well, that's expensive. Okay, we'll do one thing at a time, right? Like save up until you have enough for that. And like the impact you maybe don't see immediately, but it does have an impact, and it is one thing, or maybe you minimize your closet and you take out a lot of clothes that you don't need and take them to a thrift store. Or maybe you spend more on one nice sweater that was made from nice wool that's like sourced fairly, and it costs you $200 or $300, but it's the one sweater, like it's about shifting from quantity to quality to, anyway.
I
Let's not.
can't wait to come to your place and just hang out with you for real. Oh my
I'm
god.
not perfect at any of that. It's just,
Oh, I love I love the way that you are just thinking about it. Just there's just so much uh I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is we are abundance, and we need to direct that in the right areas, basically. Or
there's like this fear and scarcity that runs our lives, right? We are driven by it. And the marketers know it. They know that if you feel like you're missing something, they can get you to pay for it.
Mm.
And we have to be wise about that, and we have to just have our shields engaged, because it's like the marketing tactic from the beginning of time. Like if you don't have this, but your neighbor has this, like there's a it's just used against us to feel like we don't have enough and we have to fill that void, and we don't need to fill the void. The void is, I mean, if you start really focusing on what comes in without your efforts, I mean, even if you walk in in a nice park and you really become familiar with what's around you, you'll see there's food growing everywhere. It's not something they sell at the grocery store, because
right.
why would you buy plantain at the grocery store, right? Like, or it would go bad on the shelves. It's not something they figured out how to industrialize, but it is still right there at your foot. And so it's like, it's how do we learn more of that? How do we become a vessel for just receiving what's like, that's the goal. And then, I think there's a lot of unraveling that needs to happen. And so I don't, no pressure for anyone to get it exactly right, but and I am not as hippie as they come. I usually like try to just like find hippies that are a little bit more into it than me, and just like strive to be a little bit more like them, and so on and so forth, right? Like you find your mentors and keep walking in that direction.
Oh my gosh. Whew, yay. And then so I just want to make sure that that people hear so your website is the
Yeah,
schoolhouselife.com.
exactly. Yeah.
And I know you were saying that you're not big on social media, but your husband Drew
Well,
manages.
I'm on social media, yeah, but he keeps up with our Instagram and our Facebook of the Schoolhouse Life. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have a personal. I'm more involved with that, but I keep an eye on him. He's better at that. I'm just, along for the ride.
Okay, and so it's the Schoolhouse Life again on Instagram,
Yep, and
and and
Facebook
do
too.
you do the Facebook then?
No, he still does that, but I'm on both like privately. So
Okay,
you want to
okay,
look, but yeah, no, it's the Schoolhouse Life on all of that, the website, YouTube, all of the things.
okay, super. So, and I'm gonna have links in the show notes as well for you guys. But please check this out because there's so much goodness, so much available, and so much to learn. So, and the podcast, of course. I bought a homestead. Now what? So, thank you, Lacey, so much for sharing all this with me today. I really appreciate it, and seriously, I cannot wait to get to New to North Carolina.
Oh, yay. Well, I mean, you have created a vessel with your space that you're helping people take that trek towards, just doing the best that they can and better every day. So good on you. And thank you for letting me be a small part of it.
Oh, you're a big part of it now. Look out. Okay, very good. Thanks you guys for listening, and talk to you next week.
Yay.